The Grenlec Debates. Power, bright ideas.
These are the 2024 Grenlec Debates. I am your host and former Grenlec debater, Ambrosia Charles. Welcome. We're in the second round of competition, the round of 16. The theme for this round is energy policy and economics. The areas of focus are energy policies, economic impact and subsidies, and taxes. Please note that although the students are given the topics and themes to research prior to the match, these debates are impromptu. The students develop their arguments today. They've selected their motions. They have been given 30 minutes to prepare their presentations without assistance from their teachers, and they're ready to debate. Let's get to it. This match is between Grenada SDA Comprehensive and St. John's Christian Secondary School. The motion is, be it resolved that government subsidies are essential for the Caribbean's renewable energy future. For the proposition, Grenada SDA Comprehensive. For the opposition, St. John's Christian Secondary School.
Honorable judges, fellow debaters, and esteemed audience, good afternoon. We, as the proposition, firmly believe that government subsidies are essential for the Caribbean's renewable energy future. Today, I will define relevant terms and present points to demonstrate how essential subsidies are for the Caribbean. Subsidies are a sum of money granted by the government or a public body to assist an industry or business so that the price of a commodity or service may remain low or competitive. The types of subsidies are tax reductions, feed-in tariffs, and incentives. Energy is power derived from the utilization of physical or chemical resources. Renewable energy is energy such as solar, wind, hydro, geothermal, and biomass. Subsidies can help industries by increasing supply or helping consumers with high costs. They can also alter how an economy uses the resources by encouraging the growth of subsidized industries. Renewable energy subsidies are an investment in the future, creating jobs and fostering innovation. Subsidies are critical tools in shaping energy policies, influencing both consumer behavior and business investments. The Caribbean Renewable Energy Development Program estimates that the renewable energy sector could create 150,000 jobs in the Caribbean by 2030. Countries like Dominica have demonstrated that subsidies for geothermal projects can drive economic growth. By exporting clean energy to neighboring islands, Dominica stands to generate significant revenue. Many Caribbean countries have also made key initiatives for subsidies. For example, Grenada provides subsidies for households to install solar energy systems. Subsidies can drive a wedge between the prices paid and received by producers and consumers. Also, in the Caribbean, there is an abundance of renewable energy sources, such as sunlight, wind, water, biomass, etc. This can make it easier to switch to renewable energy instead of spending money on importing fossil fuels that we can use to develop our country in the future. In conclusion, my opponents may try to sway you to believe their flawed stance, but I urge you to give a listening ear to my teammates and I when we say that government subsidies are essential for the Caribbean's renewable energy future. I thank you.
Esteemed judges, worthy opponents, and most attentive audience, good afternoon. We, the opposition, stand to denounce the claim that the government subsidies are essential for the Caribbean's renewable energy future. As first speaker, I will define key terms and present two critical points to establish the foundation of our arguments. My team and I refute the definitions presented by the proposition and bring forth our own, all according to the Collins Caribbean Students Dictionary. Essential means something is vitally important or absolutely necessary. The future is the time yet to come. Subsidies are financial aids supplied by governments. Allow me to begin with the most fundamental point of governmental fiscal burden. Maintaining subsidies would put a significant strain on our government's finances. According to the Caribbean Development Bank, in countries like Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago, subsidies account for 2 to 5% of GDP annually, limiting their ability to invest in critical sectors like healthcare, education, and infrastructure. Eliminating subsidies would free up resources for other essential public services and long-term development goals. These subsidies result in Caribbean nations having a significant rise in their national debts. According to IRENA, Grenada and St. Lucia have faced the burden of increasing debts due to these subsidies. Judges, audience, do we want to continue this financial burden in our nation just to implement renewable energy? My second argument supports a point of economic inefficiency. Subsidizing leads to overconsumption and inefficiency. When energy prices are artificially low, consumers and businesses lack the incentive to conserve energy or invest in energy-efficient technologies. Subsidies lower the prices of energy, causing consumers and businesses to use more than they would even need. This would leave the Caribbean nation in a drastic state of economic inefficiency. Do we want our nation to have such economic instability? Judges, audience, do not be disoriented by the misaligned claims made by the proposition. Subsidies cause economic inefficiency and government fiscal burden. Worthy opponents, is this the future we want for the Caribbean? I think not. I thank you.
With protocol already established, good afternoon. As the second speaker for the proposition, I will further solidify my team's irrefutable stance that government subsidies are essential for the Caribbean's renewable energy future. We, the proposition, stand on the definitions brought forward by our first speaker. Firstly, government energy subsidies aim to lower the cost for producers and also attract investments, lowering the initial purchasing or investing startup costs in renewable energy technologies. By offering tax breaks, grants, or rebates, government subsidies make clean energy sources like solar panels, wind turbines, and electric vehicles more affordable, helping more people and businesses transition away from fossil fuels. This financial support can also help newer technologies reach market maturity faster, leading to widespread adoption and lower costs over time. Furthermore, according to the GNEP, the approach to government energy subsidies is part of a broader effort to balance affordable energy access with the transition to a more sustainable energy future. Many countries in the Caribbean are providing government energy subsidies, such as Barbados, that offers grants and tax subsidies and incentives and is aiming to be 100% renewable energy by 2030. Jamaica and the Dominican Republic have also implemented projects that are subsidized to promote the use of renewable energy and energy efficiency.
Finally, the Caribbean is comprised of a number of developing nations with a high poverty rate. Even in Grenada, the CDB states that 42% of the Grenadian population falls before the poverty line. How then can we say that government energy subsidies are not essential for the Caribbean's renewable energy future? Judges, my worthy opponent's rosy outlook fails to consider the fact that the Caribbean does not have the financial capacity to shoulder the economic and social backlash costs for such a sudden, drastic move. Economic stability should take priority over long-term aspirations. With these points brought forward, I have no doubt that the government energy subsidies are essential for the Caribbean renewable energy future. I thank you.
Distinguished panel of judges, worthy opponents, and listening audience, good afternoon all. Our first speaker formally stated 2 reasons why we stand against the motion. As second speaker of the opposition, I will explore 2 crucial points of lack of infrastructure and increase in tax and loans. Firstly, we will have an increase in tax and we'll have to take extra loans. Grenada citizens are already struggling to pay taxes and loans. Don't you think this will put a strain on the people of Grenada? My second point is lack of infrastructure and capacity. The evidence is undeniable when we look at the lack of infrastructure and capacity. Grenada currently lacks the infrastructure and technical capacity to fully transition to a green economy. This makes additional subsidies and incentives an ineffective solution. For instance, a report from the Caribbean Development Bank indicates a report that Grenada's renewable energy capacity stands at only 2.5% of its total energy production. Despite Grenlec's efforts to try to adapt these systems, these efforts remain insufficient in comparison to the country's overall needs. Judges, audience, do not be bewildered by the claims made by the proposition. Our evidence shows why we do not stand with the motion. Thank you.
Dear worthy opponent, do you know the negative effects these subsidies would have on the Caribbean economy?
My worthy opponent, why do we focus on the negative? Focus on the positive.
Dear worthy opponent, the negatives matter because if we were to implement these subsidies, we would be further drowning the Caribbean countries in debt. Next question, I am moving on.
Worthy opponents, why should government subsidies be essential if most Caribbean countries lack the financial stability to implement them?
There are many ways to gain the financial funds. There are people who donate to see that these happen.
They were the opponent, but how can we be so sure that these people will donate the correct amount of money to build this infrastructure? They were the opponent. How can we be so sure? How can we rely on others when we will be putting our country in an economic depression? They were the opponent. Next question, I am moving on. They were the opponent. Why should the government create subsidies if most Caribbean islands lack the infrastructure to implement renewable energy?
That is untrue because there are many Caribbean countries that have already started to implement these measures.
Dear way opponents, according to my research, Jamaica has tried to implement renewable energy, but it only accounts for 1% of their electricity production, which then means that it is inefficient and a waste of money and time. Dear way opponents.
According to my statistics, Barbados have already started, and by 2030, they are aiming to achieve 100, currently at 15% of
Well, the
their
opponents, according to
energy source.
Grenlec, they have not been successful in implementing these renewable energy plans. Moving on to the next question. Wouldn't these subsidies put a financial burden on Caribbean governments?
Your first speaker stated that subsidies put a strain on finances, making countries unable to invest in healthcare and education. But isn't it true that the removal of subsidies would place an even greater burden by forcing the government to step in when taxes can no longer be paid by the general public?
No, the opponent, that is false, because according to the Caribbean Development Bank, subsidies come from the GDP of the country and not external forces. So the subsidies put a more financial strain on the country's economy than removing them.
But this was even supported by a second speaker when she stated that the public cannot pay taxes. Does this not prove that your argument is flawed?
But we never... No, the opponent, that is false.
But your second speaker stated that. So are you presenting false information? You're contradicting yourselves.
Go ahead.
Dear with the opponent, our second speaker never said that the citizens cannot pay taxes. She simply said that these subsidies would put a strain on the Caribbean government because they would be taking out of their GDP to put into these subsidies, which they are selling for a cheaper price, therefore putting an economic strain on the country. There with the opponent.
And she also said these subsidies increase the taxes that the citizens would have to pay.
Next question. Your second speaker stated that Grenada lacks technical and infrastructure to transfer to green energy. But what does this have to do with subsidies?
Because the moot clearly stated that subsidies are essential for the renewable energy future of the Caribbean. So clearly, renewable energy...
And even though, doesn't Grenada already have solar plants and wind turbines installed on island?
Dear with the opponent, these wind turbines and solar energy plants are installed on people's rooftops. Dear with the opponent, there are no big solar energy plants. And the wind energy plant in Carriacou was actually destroyed by Hurricane Beryl. There with the
That
opponent.
was not finished.
And there is also a solar power plant in Plain St. Patrick's, which I can see when I stand in the veranda of my house.
Dear with the opponent, was this built using subsidies?
Okay.
Good afternoon, all. As a rebuttal speaker for the opposition, I stand here today eager to unravel the ludicrous claims my opponents dare to speak on this afternoon. The first speaker stated that we have abundant resources and in the Caribbean, which makes it easier for us to implement this renewable energy. But if this is true, why are there not many Caribbean islands that don't have yet to have renewable energies implemented? Take Grenada, our own Grenada as an example. Our dear beloved Grenlec have tried many different projects, but yet none have really stuck with us. Do you know why? Because we are lacking the infrastructure to be able to sustain this renewable energy. Why should we subsidize renewable energy when we have seen that it is insufficient to actually invest into this department? The second speaker stated that we have a high poverty rate in the Caribbean, in Grenada specifically of 42%. If this is true, why should we invest in subsidies in renewable energy essential? Shouldn't we invest it in our poor Grenadians' job wages to make a better economy for our dear Grenada? The decisions we make have lasting consequences. I apologize. Let us not be fooled by the proposed dreams, and stand with us, the opposition, for arguments demonstrated are not only rational, but valid. I thank you.
With protocol already established, good afternoon. My team and I stand firmly with the moot, be it resolved that government subsidies are essential for the Caribbean's renewable energy future. This point that my opponents have brought forward seems plausible at first, but when you really analyze it, judges, you would realize that it is absolutely flawed. It was stated by a first speaker that government energy subsidies have resulted in financial debts. However, the implemented financial incentives are intended to lower cost of energies for Caribbean consumers and producers, which increase demand and production. Your second speaker then stated that Grenada low-income citizens already have it hard paying back taxes and loans, so isn't that exactly why we need subsidies to lower the burden of these taxes and loans? She then stated that we lack the infrastructure needed to implement green energy. But isn't this exactly why we need subsidies and incentives? My opponents even agreed that citizens have problems paying taxes. Doesn't this directly align with the proposition? This is exactly why we argue this fact. My opponents, I understand that your viewpoint is flawed and contradicting, but the facts has proven that there is more good than bad in this situation. I thank you.
Congratulations to Grenada STA Comprehensive on winning this match. We say hats off to all participants. We thank you, our viewing audience, for joining us, and we invite you to tune in again for a complete coverage of the next match in the Round of 16 series.
The Grenlec Debates. Power, bright ideas.
The Grenlec Debates will be broadcast on MTV Monday and Thursday at 9 p.m. and on Saturday at 6 p.m. and on GBN TV Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. and on Sunday at 4 p.m.
Tune in